Hi everybody, it's Jisoo here and Returnal. I loved everything about my experience with Returnal, but the game can sometimes feel a little bit overwhelming, a little bit unfair. So today I'm going to provide you some tips and tricks on how to dominate the game. Yes, you're going to make it. Maybe. Okay, number one, it's okay to die. Returnal can be very punishing, but the good thing is you get to keep your permanent upgrades, and the next time you come back, it is slightly easier to navigate the map, navigate the whole area, and you can even interact with those thingies to unlock very rare in artifacts, and those artifacts will be available in your next cycle. And you can just spend all your ether here and make sure that you unlock as much artifacts as possible. And sometimes you really get very lucky and you get something that can change the whole course of the game. So my advice would just be to keep your ether and just use it here. Because yeah, every time you return, you'll be provided with a new item or a new artifact, a new consumable. So definitely worth a shot. Number two will come as a bit of a duh, but hear me out. In the game, sometimes you get very overwhelmed and you want to keep your distance. The problem is that when you kill an hostile, the only two things you get are Obilites and proficiency. So when you keep your distance, it means you only get proficiency and you lose about half the Obilites, maybe even more. So at the end of the day, you will find yourself in a situation where you can't afford an upgrade or a consumable just because you don't have enough Obilites. But here's the thing. You want to always keep on the move. You want to stay close, but not too close to certain enemies because they will try to hit you. But you want to stay close enough so that you can collect almost every Obolite that they drop, because this is going to be a game changer. You will need all those Obilites to be able to afford certain augments, certain upgrades, certain consumables, which can define a run. Imagine just being able to purchase every single artifact or every single thing you see on one biome. You'll be very well equipped to get into the next one. Trust me, it'll make a difference. Thus, try your best to collect as many Obilites as possible because you will notice that the game becomes significantly easier the more artifacts and the more augments you can afford. 3. Use your Atropian keys to open doors. You can only use your keys to open either containers or doors. My personal advice would be to use those keys to only open doors unless you have plenty of keys. Because here's the thing. You can only get weapons, consumables, or artifacts from chests. But that's just from one chest. And chances are you're going to replace that weapon or just ditch the consumable for something better as you move on. Opening doors can sometimes give you access to a whole new area with new enemies, with sometimes secrets like data cubes, items, artifacts, story-oriented items. You will be missing out on a lot of items, on a lot of things, just by using keys on one single container. So my advice, use all your keys on doors. Unless you have a lot, like a whole lot. I also remember that one particular upgrade, the ability to walk on lava, is locked behind a locked door in the fraction waste. So you will be missing out on an entirely optional upgrade if you just didn't have a key left. So use them wisely. Malfunctions are your friends. It's easy to get scared when you see that the probability for opening safely a malignant chest or to get a malignant items is very high or even high. But let me tell you something. It always comes down to luck. And what you sometimes get from those containers is very valuable. It can be a gun or it can be an artifact. And even when you get hit by a malfunction, you can always lift it. I will advise Going for those malfunctions at the beginning of a biome and not at the end, because you want to be able to collect Obilites if you get hit by that particular malfunction, or you want to be able to kill hostiles, but there won't be any if it's at the end of your run. So make sure you do that at the beginning rather than at the end. And trust me, you will be rewarded by very great items. Choose your parasites wisely. Parasites are lovely, but they can also be deadly. When choosing a parasite, make sure that you do not choose any that can hinder your ability to heal, your ability to melee, or your ability to dash. Everything greatly increasing your ability to dash is a no-go. Everything hindering the way you heal is a no-go. You always want to choose something that has a very passive negative effect. So you always want to be on the lookout for those negative effects. You always want to have the easiest ones to manage. Something like taking damage when using Atropian keys is fine, as long as you don't care about having max health or about messing with your adrenaline. Something like taking damage from high falls is also fine if you keep in mind that every time you fall for something very high, you need to dash right before you land. Also, everything related to Obilites disappearing faster or your alt fire cooldown increase, all those things are great negative effects because most of the time the things you get from those parasites are worth it, especially the ones which reduces your malfunction probability of certain items or the one increasing the effectiveness of parasites in general. Do not go to secret areas right away. Throughout your exploration, you will stumble upon some completely optional secret areas. Those areas grant you access to sometimes suit augments, artifacts, containers containing weapons, and even sometimes just a room full of parasites or Obilites. To maximize your chances of getting the best out of it, you want to make sure that you come here when you have a lot of Obilites to afford any kind of suit augment or suit artifacts you will be presented with. And the same can be applied to those scout signals you see spread across almost every biome. You want to make sure that you go to Avenger Scout when you have all the possible chances, when you have the most damaging weapon, and when your proficiency is high enough. Here's the thing, sometimes, not every time, but sometimes the mini bosses you're going to face are going to be very rough. It feels like everything is put together to make you fail. So you want to make sure that when you do try to avenge your scouts, you do not become a martyr. You go there with every possible chances of success. And also, when you do beat those, mini bosses, they drop a weapon. And if your proficiency is, let's say, at 4 or 3, you always will get, most of the time, you always will get a weapon which proficiency level is higher than the one you have right now. And I got lucky once and I got a Holo Seeker, which was 3 levels higher than the weapon I was currently carrying, which is crazy because it already makes it easier for you to go into the next biome. But let's say you did avenge that scout when your health, when you were at the beginning of the game and your proficiency was at 0. Maybe you would get a Holo Seeker which is level 1, which is not really the one, which is not very getting the most out of it. Melee is powerful. Use it. It's easy to forget that you can melee the hostiles you encounter when some of the guns in the game are just so good at dealing damage from a distance. But here's the thing, the stagger power of your melee weapon is actually crazy. It can stun most of the enemies, most of them, you face in the game. Especially those those enemies you encounter in the beginning of a biome. Especially the very first one. Those ones they will always die in one hit. No matter what, they will always die in one hit. And let's say that that's your weapon, your melee weapon without any upgrades whatsoever. You can just go, and chances are you are not going to have a great weapon at the beginning of the biome. You're going to always have a sidearm. And you can go and just clear an entire wave of enemies just by using your melee. And when you go further into the story and unlock even more artifacts, your melee, one hit of your melee weapon can actually kill multiple enemies at the same time. Just crazy, and it's not something you should sleep on. The melee weapon you have is really powerful. Consumables can make you overpowered. It's easy to overlook certain items. I was guilty of doing so because I always assumed, well, how's that going to help me? The ground surge, for example, is a very great item when you are dealing with an enemy who is on the ground. It just destroys them, and you'll wonder, why is that thing allowed to be in the game to begin with? Some items, when used properly, can completely change the tides of battle. They make almost every single encounter sounds like a joke. Even the most damaging, most frightening enemies in the Fractured Waste, probably arguably the hardest biome in the game, sounds like complete jokes when you use a proper consumables to deal with them. Even sometimes even bosses. Here, I'm using the barrier, an artifact on an item I unlocked throughout my sessions, and it's not even fair. It's not even a fair battle. Here, I'm not even moving, but he's trying his best to kill me. I just don't understand how this is allowed to be in the game. Seriously, like, it's unfair. Even Thrike, or Thrick, I think it's pronounced Thrike. Even in this fight, with an enemy who is moving, if you use your consumables properly, you can completely ignore this guy and just stand right in front of him and be like, hey, I'm right here, do something. Like, he's trying to do something right now, but he can't. And yeah, you should not overlook those consumables. Some of them are really, really good. You should always try to use them to your advantage because they will help you. They will make you overpowered. Use Reconstructors to have a second chance. On my first playthrough, I didn't quite understand what those things did. And if you are in a similar situation, let me tell you right now what it actually does. It makes sure that you are respawned here when you die after powering this device in the biome you are currently in. You can find one constructor in every single biome, and it's a great way to make sure that you don't lose your progress, especially when you go into a very hard biome like the 5th one. That way you kind of have a certainty that even if you die, you can learn from your mistake and come back right into the action instead of just starting from the beginning, the previous biome. You can encounter those reconstructors, but do keep in mind that you need ether to power those things on. And if you die in a biome and the last reconstructor you powered was in another biome, you are going to just lose your progress. So make sure that the reconstructor you power is in the biome you're currently in. Otherwise, it's just going to go to waste. Last but not least, take your time. Like, seriously, take your time. On my first playthrough, I died 11 times, and half of those deaths were out of pure and mere frustration. Every time I died, I was so eager to go back to the last place I died at that I would just skip every upgrades or every fight. I would just try to go as fast as possible to the next, where I died at. But I was making a crucial mistake. I was skipping a lot of enemies, which could have provided me with proficiency and sometimes even items and Obilites. When you jump right into the next biome without exploring first, without taking the time to uncover every single little secret you could probably find, in one biome, your chances of survival significantly decreases. You will not make it. You may make it, but you will have a harder time as opposed to if you take your time to get there. Trust me, what you need in this game to succeed is time. You need to take your time. You need to unlock those weapon traits, especially the weapons you use the most. Maybe it's the Holo Seeker, maybe it's a carbine, maybe you're a sidearm person. You want to make sure that you do not leave a single stone unturned. You want to make sure that you take your time. Here's the thing. If you are bound to die, well, might as well make it worthwhile. And I found out that when you take your time to explore, the game becomes so easy, you really wonder what's happening. I don't think personally that Returnal is a hard game, but I think the frustration which comes from dying is something you should not. It's not. Sometimes you feel like the game is unfair, but trust me, I recently tried to go back to to playing the game from the ground up without any upgrades. Like I'm talking level 1, with nothing at all, like starting the game from scratch, and I was able to complete the game by dying only once. And I died once to that one guy, that scripted death at the beginning of the game, that giant guy who hits like a truck. That's where I died. But with my experience and knowing the enemy patterns and knowing that I should take my time, it took me 6 hours to complete the game from the first to the last biome with no upgrades, with no permanent, nothing. I had to unlock everything again, and it took me 6 hours, so I'm definitely positive that you can do it too. You can take your time and you can make it happen. You just need to chill. Every time you die, you just need to take it slow, and you will destroy, trust me, you will destroy those bosses, and you will wonder, why did I ever think that game was hard? Thank you for watching this video. If you liked it and found it informative, you can drop a like. It does help a lot. I do have a lot more content coming, and well, you can subscribe to keep up to date with those content. And yeah, I'll see you guys very soon. Hopefully, you will use all this knowledge to your advantage and dominate the game.